Right on. Welcome back, ladies and gents, or just welcome to the channel. My name is Ben, and today we're going to be going over how to make these grass tufts, or as I like to call them, gourmet grass tufts. And the reason why I call them gourmet grass tufts is because they're not quite your average grass tufts. They really, as you can see, we got some nice sort of wild grain effects, and we got different lengths of grass. It's all very nice and fancy. And well, I've actually been working this past week or so, trying out many different techniques, figuring out different ways to do things, and I failed. But I've also found this technique, which I must say is my preferred method at this point. So this is the method that we're going to be going over today. And yeah, so I do have now summer vacation. School ended 2 days ago, which I'm very happy about. However, that does mean that there are going to be some sort of weird changes to the channel for the next 2 months. If you want to hear about all that, just wait until the end where I explain more in depth. Yeah. So anyways, subscribe if you haven't already. It allows you guys to see more of my content, and it allows my page to grow as well. And if you want more frequent updates and some better pictures and all that, you can also follow my Instagram. So let's get into it.
Right, so let's start off with some of the things that you're going to need. I have it all laid out here. Now, first of all, you can see underneath this brown paper stuff. That's baking paper. It's sort of like a non-stick paper that I'm pretty sure has fat in it. So this makes it very easy for us to take the, this is going to be our platform for like making the actual grass tufts. And then you can very easily take them off. Then you're going to need probably one of the most important things, some PVA glue, also known as wood glue or white glue. This is wood glue from Pathex. It's a pretty common brand here in Belgium, and you should be able to get this stuff at your local hardware store or an art supply store even. Then you're going to need a static grass applicator. This one is from Warworld Scenics, the Pro Grass Micro Static Grass Applicator. I got it for about 60 bucks, but I since found out that you can make your own, and here in the corner somewhere I'll have a video linked from Towan where he makes a very good tutorial video on how to make your own static grass applicator for, of course, much cheaper. Then I have 3 different lengths of static grass, so keep in mind these are gourmet grass tufts, so we're gonna need a lot of different sizes of grass to make them interesting. So starting out with meadow grass from Nock. This is like sort of like spring color, and it's 2.5 millimeters. Then I have the same one, but from this is 6 millimeters. And then I have beige dry grass, also from Nock, and this one is 12 millimeters. And then you're gonna want some of this stuff, not razor wire, don't look at that. You're gonna want some like very fine sand or some modeling pigments. These are my own homemade modeling pigments, which I just made by crushing up sand basically. And you're also gonna want some very small scissors. I have these ones, I got them in like a very cheap manicure set, which, believe it or not, actually has some great tools. You got tweezers in there, you have scissors, that sort of stuff. So, but you can also use medical scissors. Those work great as well. And another optional thing that you can use is a metal baking pan. And I'll explain why you can use that later, but I actually don't have one now. So before we get started on the actual project, I'm gonna show you guys some actual like inspiration for this, for these grass tufts, just to give you an idea of what we're actually making. Right, so here you can see my lovely garden, aka grass field. Apologies for the wind, of like the noise of the wind. But so basically here you can see we've planted some grass tufts, or as we call them in Dutch, grasbollen. And as you can see, we have some sort of fine wild grain here on top. And unfortunately, that's too fine for us to be able to replicate in 1/35th scale without like using any crazy tools. But if you come over here, we can see this one has some wild grain on top, and that's where we're going to be using the sort of modeling pigments for, and like the sand. So just looking at the structure of the actual grass tuft, we have here at the bottom, we have this shorter grass, which is like the same as everywhere else on the field, and that's going to be our 2 mm grass. Then on top of that, we have this long green grass, and that's going to be our 6 mm grass. And on top of that, you have these few strands of the wild grain, and that's going to be our 12 mm beige grass. Okay, so we're back at the workbench, and here I have my baking paper laid out. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my PVA glue, and this particular glue is very nice because it has a nice little tip at the end for pretty fine glue application. So I'm going to go ahead and just make around 50 because my diorama is very big. So basically what you're going to want to do is, it's very simple. You just lay on a little blob of glue. Roughly that size is good. That's I'd say about a ½ centimeter in diameter, and then I leave about a centimeter or 1.2 centimeters between, and just keep going until I got the desired amount of the actual grass tufts that I want. And this glue takes quite a while to dry, so you don't have to worry about working time. Obviously you're going to want to do all of this probably within an hour or so, but even like 2 hours is fine. So yeah, I'm just going to finish this and then show you guys once I've got all of them down. So now I've gotten all my 50 glue blobs, and we're going to start actually applying the grass now. This is the point where a metal baking pan would come in handy, because then you can see on the static grass applicator we have this clip here, and you can attach this to the metal baking pan, and it sort of distributes the electricity evenly over all of the glue. But now I just use an aluminium wire, and I just holding it close to the glue still like makes it work. So starting here, as you can see, I have my my 6 mm grass, and putting it in the device is actually really simple. It's just you break it up a little bit as you put it in, and it should work just fine. So you turn it on, and very simply you hold the pin close, and you just start shaking. And because I've previously actually used this grass, like I'm reusing it now, it's a little bit stuck together, so it might take a little bit more work to get it out. So usually it wouldn't take this much energy. But basically I'm gonna do this on all of them, and I'll show you guys like sort of the amount that you want on each blob, and then we'll move on to the next part. Okay, now this is roughly sort of the density of grass you're going to want to have. Now I'm going to remove all of the excess grass on the sides and show you what it looks like then. Okay, now that that's done, we're going to do the exact same thing, except now we're going to apply the 2 mm wild grass, and the intention that we're going to have here is sort of to fill in all of the gaps in between the longer grass. Don't worry too much about the beige grass at the moment. We're going to be adding that in a second after this, but we're only going to need very few actual strands of beige. So now our main focus is just basically fill in the gaps. So yeah. Okay, now as you can see, we filled in sort of most of the gaps with the 2 mm grass, and now finally we're going to add the beige grass. And really with this, you actually don't need a lot. So I'm only going to be putting about 2 sort of pinchfuls, I guess, in the static grass applicator, and that should be more than enough to last us for all of this. But of course, you can always add more or less, depending on actually like the amount that you're going to be using. And again, this is very simple. It's just the same, except because there's less glue actually exposed, there's going to be less of the grass sticking, which is actually the point, which is like, that's what we want. So yeah. Right, now as you can see, we've applied the beige grass, and they're looking good, except now they're sort of like half circles. We want them more to stick straight up. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to take like a piece of steel wire. You can use a needle or anything, just anything sort of long and thin, I guess. And all you're going to do is sort of tease it upwards from the sides up. And of course it's not going to be a perfect job, but later on we're going to come in there with those small scissors and we're just going to clean them up on the sides. But just try and get as many of the fibers up as you can. Just make it like sort of stand tall, I guess. So yeah, this is a very time consuming process. I have a movie on right now, Sully, if you like that movie. And then yeah, so just gonna do that for all 50 of them, and we're gonna let that dry, and then tomorrow I'm gonna let it dry for about 24 hours, and then tomorrow I'm gonna come back and work further on them. And yeah, so this is really the hardest part done, but yeah, so I'll see you guys tomorrow. Alright, so it's the next day. It's been about 22 hours now, and that is definitely more than enough time than you need for this to dry. In fact, it should only take about 14 hours to fully set. And now we're gonna take them off. So this is where the baking sheet comes in handy. All you do, you just grab it by the fibers and you pop it off. Simple as that. And I like to have them in a container like this. Like this is an old ice cream box. Especially when working with large quantities like this, you just pop them in a container and they're nice and organized. So I'm gonna pop all these off and then show you guys how we're gonna sort of clean these up using our little surgical scissors. Okay, so now comes easily my least favorite process, but you know, everything about this is really long and boring. So, but the results are great. So at least that, right? So very simple yet time consuming. Just gonna grab our what's it called? Our grass tufts. And we have our little medical manicure whatever scissors. And all we're gonna do is we're gonna hold it by the fibers in the middle, and we're just gonna go around and cut the sides. Now this is optional, I guess, but this just helps it sort of focus all of the fibers at the top. So what that means is, like, instead of it being sort of a half circle, it's more like you know, it's all of the fibers are just like going to the top, you know. So then you end up with something like that, which I much prefer. And if you want to go one step further, you can also sort of vary around the grass length height, or no, the grass lengths, and just go in there with the scissors from top and sort of cut willingly. Just the only disadvantage of doing that is that you might accidentally cut off some of the 12mm fibers, which we don't have that many of. So that's one thing that I don't like about that. But generally, again, very long process, but it works, and it makes them look a lot better, in my opinion. But again, 100% optional. It's up to you. Okay, so now I've sort of cleaned up enough of the tufts to at least demonstrate the next part. So all I have here is I have my grass tufts, obviously, then a drop of the PVA glue here, and some of our modeling pigment or sifted sand. And this is super simple. Now we're gonna do the sort of wild grain. I actually don't know what it's called, but I just call it that. So you'll notice, of course, that some of our fibers are longer than others, and it's on those longer fibers that we want the wild grain to appear. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dip it upside down in the pigment very lightly, and you can sort of clean it up a little bit. Going again, it's pretty easy to mess up, and then super simple. You just drop some of these pigments on top of the tuft, and it sticks, of course, to the areas with the glue. Then you give it a blow, clean it off, and then you have these sort of little, yeah, it looks like wild grain. And I don't like to do this on every single tuft, just because the art of modeling is also about keeping irregularity and not making anything uniform. So I only do it on certain ones, but nonetheless, it's a nice effect, and it sort of switches things up from your ordinary just grass, So yeah, honestly, it's as simple as that. You'll notice that the glue on the bottom here, it's sort of noticeable, and when you put it on a brown background, it's not as noticeable. But if you want it to be like completely invisible, you can also, of course, at the beginning, mix the PVA with some brown glue. That also works. Or you can paint the bottom here with brown. That also works, considering it's translucent. So yeah. All I'm gonna do now is just continue doing all of these, and yeah, guys, that's it for this video. So yeah.
Right, everybody. Well, that's gonna have to do it for this video. If you learned something new or enjoyed, then make sure to drop a like or something. Although I know you enjoyed, considering you watched all the way to the end. But no, seriously, a like definitely would be appreciated, and it just helps my page grow and all that. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you aren't subscribed already, I would also greatly appreciate it if you did that. I looked the other day on YouTube Analytics, and it turns out that about 81% of you guys who watch my videos aren't even subscribed to me, which, I'm not pointing any fingers or anything, but that's not very cash money of you guys. But no, in all seriousness, if you want to see more of my content and stuff, you can, subscribing definitely helps, and it also helps my page grow and all that. And if you also want to be notified every time I post something, then click that little bell next to the thing, next to the subscribe button. But just know that I post pretty much every Sunday. Speaking of which, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, summer vacation is upon us, and I'm gonna be in the Netherlands for the next 3 weeks. Or not the next 3 weeks, but in a week for 3 weeks. Just visiting family and stuff. And I don't want to fall out of my regular posting schedule like I did last time. So what I'm going to do this time is just film a few extra videos beforehand and just post them every Sunday. The only thing is they're going to be probably much shorter videos that only explain one technique, similar to this video, but probably even shorter. And that's also going to be sort of an experiment to see if you guys enjoy those videos more than the longer videos that explain multiple techniques. So, just and either way, you can let me know that in the comments, like which one you prefer more. And just if you have a question or, a comment, you can put that in the comments as well. Or of course, you can also contact me personally via my Instagram. And anyways, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and have a great day. Farewell.